Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Eric Murphy.
I'm V. LaBianca.
This is Skeptic Generation.
And we need
to talk.
It's been a week.
It really has been a week. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're celebrating my birthday today. It was actually yesterday, but yesterday was a day full of recuperating from travel and everything.
Well, we spent the first 6 to 8 hours actually traveling, and then we crashed around 3.
Yeah. And then, so it has been a long last couple of days, but we are happy to be back and we're happy that you're here with us.
Yeah.
So before we dive in though, how's it going?
I'm still recuperating. I was gone for a month, and then I get back for less than a week, and then I left again, and now I'm back again, and I am done with airports for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, me too.
I just can't do it anymore.
Agreed.
So I will be a hermit for, at least the next 3 months. Eric is going to be cashing in on taking a little bit of a break since he held down the fort back in June. So at least for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be hosting either solo or hopefully with a guest. I am waiting
really
to confirm.
Cool guest, hopefully.
But that announcement will hopefully be sometime this week. And yeah, you should definitely tune in, if only to see me manage the show alone for the first time, which should be interesting. At least you're in the other room and not in Portland. That way I can call you if things
there are
absolutely
any issues,
blow up.
I will absolutely be here.
I'll be just talking and the background will just catch on fire for no reason.
No. It's going to be fine. It's going to be good. And you're going to have fun.
Oh my gosh.
And I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Did we have any announcements before we dove into calls?
I don't think so.
All right. That's good because we've got some really good callers.
Yeah, we've had people waiting on the line for half an hour already, and we just started. So let's dive in. Let's start with Chris.
Yeah, Chris was waiting the longest. Actually, as soon as we started calling studio a half hour ago, Chris was right there ready to talk to us. It says in the notes that they have a moral argument for the existence of the Christian God and that human ambitions to act moral are predicated on religious foundations. Chris, you're live with Eric and V. Hello. Can you hear us okay?
Yes. I'm on headphones. Is that okay?
That's all right. We're turning you up, and I think we're gonna. Yeah, I think we're okay. Hit me. What do you want to talk about?
Well, first of all, Eric, I wanted to say happy birthday to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's very nice of you. Yeah, I turned 35. So not the most exciting birthday, but year older. But Chris,
Hey, really a bitch, ain't it, man?
It really is, dude. It is. But I've got to tell you, I am happier at 35 than I was at 25. That's for sure. So I found my person. I'm doing what I want to do. So I'm pretty good. But you wanted to talk about the moral argument for the existence of God. So you're a believer, a Christian, I'm assuming?
Yes, I've been a Christian for 30-something years. I have 2 kids, one still in high school, one just graduated college, and one of them kind of has dwelled away from religious beliefs. Or my kids, once they're adults, I can't control what they believe, but I try to explain a few things to them, and about the moral argument about honesty.
Okay.
That's kind of the basis for it.
So
say if you commit something.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
Did you say honesty?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think that a person needs to be religious to be honest?
Well, it's based on a lot of religious principles. Like, say if you do something that nobody sees, nobody's there to punish you for it, then
right.
What basis do you have to not continue that action?
Well, that's a really good question. I think that, V, could you turn my volume up a little bit more?
Sure.
Thank you. I honestly, from where I'm standing, think that it's the other way around, that religion follows us, that religious teachings simply reflect the values that humans have. And so the people who wrote those books are reflecting those values. And so kind of from that scope, looking at that, right? Why would you do something if nobody's watching? Because as social creatures, we do have values, and we would act on those values whether or not someone is watching. We may act a little bit differently, maybe more inclined to show ourselves as moral creatures if no one was watching. But yeah, I think that we're still going to behave the way we're going to behave.
Yeah, but there's no consequence for what you do.
Well, we don't know that. What's an example of something that you would be doing that's dishonest in secret multiple times if you were not an honest person? Can you give me an example?
Like a sin?
Well, like something dishonest, because we're specifically talking about honesty right now.
Oh, the number one, lie. Looking at someone in the face and lying to them, deceiving them.
Okay.
Fooling. That's absolutely the most dishonest and disgusting thing one can do.
To lie to somebody?
Yes, to be a liar.
Okay. What is an example of a lie that you're talking about here? Is it like, oh, I like your hair when you actually don't like their hair, or is this what kind of a lie? Let's role play for a second.
Well, that's a little white lie. Those are kind of harmless lies.
Okay, so harmful lies are the problem.
Impacts the well-being of, say, like your friend or your neighbor. That impacts them, changes their life. That makes them distrustful of you, you know.
Okay, so we're talking specifically about lies that would harmfully impact somebody else?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Like what?
Okay, let's say I was unfaithful to my wife. I told her I was out going to get something for dinner or something, and I blatantly lied to her. She knows I lie, and I'm actually not going out and getting there. I think you know where this is going, but
okay.
Let's say that's pretty
Okay.
That makes sense.
Is that a good example?
That is a good example. But the thing that's confusing to me is, did you say that she knows that you lied? Because that would be a different situation. You're talking specifically about situations where you wouldn't get caught?
Yeah, she doesn't know
Okay,
what
she
the
doesn't
lie
know.
is, but she knows that there's a lie involved.
Oh, okay. So
I lied to her.
Okay.
So do you think if you weren't a believer, you wouldn't feel guilty?
Still, it's in your heart to feel guilty. It's in there. It's in your heart.
I mean, I understand the flowery language, and I would agree with you in concept that it's a part of you, right? You would feel guilty about being dishonest with and taking advantage of the trust of somebody that you've dedicated your life to in this example. I think that believer or non-believer, you're going to feel guilty and shameful about it. And if you don't, that's pretty crummy. And that's a fact, whether you're a believer or not. I really don't know where the belief comes into it. Like, I don't feel less guilty as a non-believer, you know, if I did that. I would imagine the same for you. So I don't know how you're getting this idea, or where you're getting this idea from. It sounds like you're carrying this assumption that non-believers are sociopaths somehow.
Well, not sociopaths. Let's say you punch somebody in the face. You don't like their face. You go up to them, you punch them in the face.
Right.
You want to hurt them. You want to cause pain on them without facing any kind of consequence or action taken. Now, if I can just do that, if I could just walk outside and punch somebody who I don't like, who looked at me funny, what justification do I have to not go punch the next person who makes me mad? Like, I could just keep doing it. I can go punch all my neighbors.
Chris, I'll tell you why, because you're not an asshole.
Well,
you're carrying this assumption. I'm sorry, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Chris, you're carrying this assumption that, number one, people don't do bad things because otherwise they're going to get fucking spanked for it. And that's just not true. We're moral, ethical creatures, and those morals and ethics are based in reality, right? We live in a world where people act morally and ethically. Don't pretend, because you are just pretending that those morals and ethics go out the windows if you stop believing, and I just don't accept that. And so let's go back to your original assertion, that way we don't get confused here. Let's talk about the assumption of cheating on your wife. Would a non-believer not feel guilty? Because that is a horrible assumption for you to make. I really want you to clarify and let me know if I'm making a bad assumption here. Do you think a non-believer would feel just fine cheating on their wife if they don't get caught?
I mean, they have no reason to feel guilty.
That's not the question that I asked you, Chris. There's a very fine difference. Do you understand what that difference is?
Yes.
Okay, so do you think that a non-believer would not feel guilty or shameful if they betrayed the trust of a person that they dedicated their life to? Do you think they wouldn't feel guilty?
I don't think they would feel guilty. No, I don't think they'd have a reason to. I don't think.
Okay, so Chris, what you're telling me is that you wouldn't feel guilty if you didn't get in trouble for cheating on your wife.
I'm a believer.
No. Hold on. No, that aside, if you didn't believe, you're saying you wouldn't feel guilty for cheating on your wife. Because right now, what I'm assuming, what I'm getting is you're taking your moral issues and putting them on everybody else. And the fact is, if that is your moral stance, then I think you're not a very moral person. And it is not fair for you to take your crummy morals and put it on everybody else.
Well, I mean, sometimes she does piss me off, but I would never take that to a full extent of saying, hey, I'm going to ruin your life and break up my marriage. I would never do that. I'm not that kind of man.
Well, and the fact that you're looking at it in a retributive way is weird, but we'll just put that on the shelf for now. Chris, all you're telling me right now, all I'm getting from this is that if you don't think you're going to get punished, you're going to do really shitty things because you're... I don't understand why you're putting that on us. It's callous. It removes the humanity from the other people you're talking about. It assumes a kind of sociopathy from other people. And I'm trying to point this out to you because it is an atrocious assumption. Don't you want to start a conversation? No, don't you want to start a conversation by assuming the humanity in the other person you're talking to? Aren't you going to get further that way?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know you personally.
Okay.
I don't know how the Lord has affected you. I don't know your backstory. I don't know everything leading up to this point.
Well,
that's what I'm saying.
Then let me give you a beautiful tool that's going to help you moving forward. Okay, it's the principle of charity. When you interact with somebody, you need to be charitable to them. Be charitable in the way that they are. You know, if they're talking and they say something that sounds awful, ask them, clarifying questions. Assume that they misspoke. Right? If they are talking to you about morals, assume that they have a high moral standard until they show you that they don't. Because if you come at it from the other way around, you're just painting the other person as a monster, and that gets you nowhere. Do that for everyone. Don't think you need to know everybody's life. Do that for everyone. That makes you a charitable listener and a charitable interlocutor. Do that. Start with that.
God bless. The Lord would be proud. God bless. God bless.
God bless what?
Yes.
What?
The statement you just made. The statement you just made, it was very well said.
Thank you. Chris, will you do that moving forward?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So restate what you were going to say. Do you think that does your moral argument now make any sense at all, given that context? Assume that I'm a moral person.
It makes even more. I think it makes even more sense after. I think it makes even more sense. It's very clear to everyone watching, I think.
What is?
Is Eric secretly a Christian?
Of a religious foundation, the lack of a... No, you're not secretly a Christian. You've always been one.
Well, then why are you calling? If we're Christians, then we're fine.
Chris, okay, and you have always been a liar, and you've always cheated on your wife. How about that, Chris? Is that a nice assumption for me to make?
I have never.
You've always been a liar. No, you've always cheated on your wife, and you hit your kids too. Is that a nice assumption for me to make?
I have never done that.
Was that nice of me to say, Chris?
Absolutely not.
Was that an assumption that I made that I put on you and didn't even give you the opportunity to rebut? I didn't even give you the opportunity, did I?
Absolutely. It's absolutely.
I agree. So why did you just do it to me?
How did I do it to you?
You said you've always been a Christian. You said you've always been a Christian. That is an assumption that you put on me, and you never gave me an opportunity. And you're in your heart, you've always been a liar, and in your heart, you've always cheated on your wife. And you hit your kids. And you cheat on your taxes. I don't know. Chris, none of those things are... Don't carry those assumptions, dude. It's rude. If you're going to talk to me like a human. Don't talk at me like a stern father, because it's not going to get you anywhere. All it's going to get you is hung up on or brushed off, because that's not how people act. You're not my dad. And even if you were going to act like that, I wouldn't listen to you. Chris, it's rude.
Well, I'm pretty sure you're one of those abortion supporters that supports Planned Parenthood jerking off on dead corpses. Dead baby corpses.
Wow!
You acceptable? Are you accepting that? Are you accepting that, boy?
But I thought we were Christians in our hearts.
Hold on a second. Listen to me, boy. You don't fucking call in like that. Okay, fine. He's done.
Wow.
What the fuck was that?
That definitely wasn't Chad. That was somebody else pulling a Baba Booey.
I don't think it was a Baba Booey. I think he just ran out. I think he just ran out.
Oh my gosh.
He pissed me off.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm just like...
I'm confused how we can be Christians in our heart and yet do what this guy's apparently thinking we do.
I don't think it's acceptable. If you're going to talk to a person of color and call them boy and assume that the conversation's going to continue.
Holy shit, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, I know you didn't, which is why
Yeah, that's fucking...
Yeah, don't fucking do it.
Yeah, okay.
Hey, everybody. If you're going to call in and do that shit, no wonder your kids aren't talking to you. I really hope they don't. Their life is better without you. Let's move on.
Oh, my goodness. Eric, who would you like to talk to next?
Well, since my blood is up, why don't we... You know what? No, we've got some really good callers. We got another theist caller that I think is going to be fun to talk to. Let's talk to Javier in South Carolina. Javier has called in before. We've had good conversations, and they want to talk about Occam's razor. And I think that would be a more beneficial conversation than we had last. What do you think, Javier?
I mean, I don't know. I'm a prominent Baba Booey enjoyer.
You know, Javier, when we say Baba Booey, there are so many Gen Z, who they have no idea what we're talking about. Apparently, we are just aging ourselves beyond belief. Okay, so hit me. Come on, talk to me. What do you think Occam's razor is? Why do you think it's important as a believer? Why should we be engaging about it?
Alrighty. So, before I'd like to also wish you a happy belated birthday.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. And I guess, to give you, I don't know if it's all right, I'd like to give the deep lore behind this question, so to speak.
Yes. Let's.
All right, then. Well, the other day I was in the car with a couple of my buddies, and at one point, Douglas Adams came up as a point of conversation because Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And I brought up the puddle analogy because, to my knowledge, Douglas Adams is the one who first came up with the puddle analogy. The puddle comes to life and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and for people who haven't read or watched any of the content for that, please check it out. And if you haven't, just in a nutshell, the idea is a puddle springs to life after a rainfall and says, "Look at the hole that I'm in." It is a perfect example of the evidence for a loving God, because it perfectly fits me. This puddle, it perfectly fits the shape I'm in. There's no way that could have happened by accident. The sun rises higher in the sky, the puddle shrinks, the puddle says, "See, look, this is perfect creation. I have this hole perfectly fits my shape, even as I change shape. What a loving God." And he continues to say that all the way up until he disintegrates. He evaporates. That's the puddle analogy, but go on.
Yeah, so I mentioned the puddle analogy to one of my friends, and another friend of mine who is listening in and is, shall we say, far more firm in his Christian belief than I am.
Okay.
He said that actually he had an issue with the puddle analogy. Basically because he gave the example of assuming that considering the hypothetical of people existing in a world where they have minimal information about the nature of how that world came about, he said that it would be equally valid to say that it was made for the creatures in it, and that the creatures in it adapted to that world. And I pointed out to him that he's not using Occam's razor there, because he's assuming that the whole entire world was made for them instead of the other way around, and that you're not using Occam's razor. And then he tried to refute the use of Occam's razor by saying that if someone is trying to commit the crime of framing somebody for murder, then using Occam's razor would yield the wrong guilty party. And I just want to make sure that I want to know what mistakes I potentially made, and if you've made a proper use of Occam's razor, and how to refute potential objections to it.
Absolutely.
Good question.
Yeah, it is. So the first thing that I would say is Occam's razor is a tool. It is definitely not the end point. Occam's razor is a good place when it comes, is a good tool for using when it comes to where we begin, right? What are our assumptions going into a thing? We're going to make as few assumptions as possible so it doesn't color the result as we get more information. And so when you're talking to your friend and you said this violates Occam's razor, I think what you were trying to get at, please tell me if I'm wrong, is where do your assumptions start? And then how many assumptions do we need to layer on top of it to get to your conclusion or mine, right? When he's talking about of solving a murder trial, that's using Occam's razor not as a starting point, but as an ending point, and going, what has the fewest assumptions? That must be true. And that's not a good use of Occam's razor. And actually, that's not just a religious thing. There are plenty of skeptics that use this wrong as well. And there are religious skeptics. I shouldn't say that. There are plenty of atheists and non-believers who use this poorly as well. Occam's razor is simply that tool to help you come to some first, starting places, so you can be on the same ground and then move forward from there.
Okay.
What do you think, V?
Yeah. Kind of the way that it was supposed to be used initially. Eric, I love your example there of the beginning point versus the end point. For me, the way I've always kind of conceived of it is if there are two explanations of a thing and both are equally likely, the one with fewer assumptions or the less complex one should be the one we go with until proven otherwise. And that is definitely... Yeah, like it's a guideline that you can use when confronting two equally unverifiable things, but it really falls apart the second that you start actually learning about a subject. So, quantum physics. I'm reading a book about quantum physics right now, and it is so messy and non-intuitive, and every single physicist either is enamored by the fact that you can't know anything about it or is frustrated in the extreme by this thing. That doesn't apply for Occam's razor anymore, right? Because now that we know that particle physics and quantum physics are a thing that works very complexly, even to the point of being confusing and unable to actually wrap our arms around, that doesn't mean that it's not true, right? So I think, like Eric said, it's a good starting point if both claims are equally unverified. But the second that you start diving into something, then that kind of falls apart and you need to actually engage with the subject matter. The other thing that is very important with this that I've kind of had to fight against is the idea that if you're talking with someone who knows a thing and you... The reason that the creationist argument gets any kind of traction at all is because they talk with people who don't know about evolution or abiogenesis, right? And so to them, they're equally unverified because they are ignorant of the body of knowledge that we have. So it's very important when you're using Occam's razor to make sure that both claims are actually unverified and it's not just you don't know the information yet, because then Occam's razor can become a crutch.
Yeah. And I kind of want to build on that.
Yeah. Because
Javier, in your example, you were saying, I think very rightly, that, you know what, Javier? The downside of a live show is sometimes you can entirely lose your train of thought, and I have done that now.
Javier, does that sound
what do you think?
Accurate to you? How are you synthesizing this?
Yeah, I'm taking in your points, and I see what you mean. I would rather I see now in the future I'll try to avoid just trying to throw Occam's razor out there. Trying to Occam's razor, therefore I win. Sort of thing.
Yeah, never gets you anywhere. It gets you to Facebook arguments with your aunt. But it is a good thing to keep in mind, because it is important to push them to recognize where is their starting place. It is not equivalent to assume that the power to rearrange particles and create living things, whole cloth like that, and having intent, without any kind of visible, tangible impact, be able to change the way things evolve or any of that, that is equivalent to, slow change over time based on outside forces, right? There's just way more assumptions. Somebody in the chat said it best, reject the greater miracle. How many miracles is your friend assuming? And how many miracles are you assuming? Because that really dramatically impacts that. So I don't think you should throw it out entirely. Just recognize what its limitations are.
Mm-hmm. I see.
Yeah. Man, as somebody who is a believer, arguing Occam's razor on that end, that's got to be frustrating. I know that when I was coming out of faith and I was having this conversation, it was so mind-blowing to me to see that there were so many people that I thought I was on the same side of that had entirely different views. It's got to be kind of, how are you synthesizing this?
Well, for me, it's not really shocking on most of the points on which I disagree with other Christians, because having been in a more Christian society for most of my life, it's like I know what they believe quite well. I used to believe a lot of it, but there's some things I can't hold on to in the face of greater evidence and understanding. I mean, my big thing, I guess the first thing that kind of started it out was biology, because biology is my favorite subject, particularly evolution and taxonomy. And as soon as the first time someone told me, but evolution has to be wrong because Genesis 1:1, and I'm like, but I understand the evidence for it, so therefore it can't be wrong. Or correction, I have a very reasonable degree of certainty. So I mean, it's not really super shocking, because not only do I already understand it, but I know where they're coming from.
Yeah, so I'm going to make a couple of assumptions. I kind of want to bounce it against you and see what you think. It seems to me that the more a Christian becomes, very, very involved and educated in a specific topic like biology, the more they view those verses in the Bible as allegory and just kind of not real. They go, okay, we're just going to put this in the not true bucket, and use this as allegory. And it feels like that is a common thread. Have you seen that the more people kind of learn about it, the more they take biblical statements that involve that and kind of move it out of the truth realm and into the allegory realm?
Definitely. There's definitely a lot of that, although there's also the people that'll just, stick, they'll plant their flag in they'll plant their flag in the camp of, well, if math is different from the Bible, then the Bible's right and math is wrong, sort of thing.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can thank Kierkegaard for that. But yeah, was there anything else, V?
I just want to commend you on the kind of conversations that you're having with people, Javier. I think you are, for lack of a better term, doing the Lord's work.
Yeah, I mean, even if we don't have the same conclusions, having good reasons for the things that you believe is what we want you to do. We want you to have the best reasons for, the way you understand the world around you. So, yeah, I'm with V. Rock on.
Yeah, absolutely. And if at some point, because it's kind of selfish for me wanting theists to have as good reasoning as possible, because I want to talk to you. I want to know if you are a skeptical person, which Javier, it sounds like you are, and you're a theist. I want to know how those two connect, because that could be the key to me changing my mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is always interesting. And if you ever want to share that connection as well, that would be a conversation I would love to have.
Totally.
Indeed. And I'm not going to say it's sorry to disappoint you, but I was kind of, maybe giving a little sneak peek for what I would like to call back about next week if I can.
Okay.
It's really more of the irreconcilability that I am seeing right in front of me, and I'm trying to, kind of not look at it, kind of like trying to ignore an elephant in the room that's tapping me on the shoulder with its trunk. The irreconcilability between some of my Christian beliefs and just my understanding of how things are and how I should understand them. So it's really like, I don't want to say a tipping point because I don't want to treat it as more dramatic than it is, but that's kind of where I'm at the moment.
Well, before you do call in, can I offer one bit of advice when it comes to that?
Sure.
Whether a God exists or doesn't exist, the person you are now is the person you are. And what you understand about the world isn't going to change whether or not you're a good person. And it isn't going to change whether or not you're a good brother or husband or father or whatever. And I think that is a really, really important thing to remember, because it really fucked me up as I was kind of working through that. It's important to recognize that whatever, conclusions you're coming to, it doesn't change who you are. It just changes, it just means that you know more about things, not that you are less of a person. Because I don't know about you, but coming from a strong faith background, it sure felt that way for a lot of us.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. Although, and I won't take up too much more of your time. I know there are plenty of other callers, but I guess the last thing I'll say in terms of that regard is for a long time, I've viewed a lot of these things that I get from Christianity as maybe not shackles. Shackles may not be the right word, but like things that are restricting my freedom. In other words, shackles. I'm not good at it.
But it does come with a whole suite of things that are prepackaged that you don't have to work on super hard. And I mean, there's an allure to it. That's understandable. But it's awesome that you are wanting more for yourself. That's cool.
Right. Well, I appreciate all the kind words. It's been a nice conversation.
Well, when you start a conversation by saying happy birthday, we're going to be nicer to you. That's,
Well, I mean, Chris also started by saying happy birthday.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Oh, man, I have selective memory. Javier, take care. Thank you for calling in.
Right. Bye.
Bye.
That was a bit of a palate cleanse.
Yeah, Javier's calls tend to be.
Yeah. Let's toss it over to you. Who do you want to talk to next?
There are a couple that I'm interested in. I think Robert has a pretty interesting call.
The difference between skepticism and atheism.
Yeah.
Is skeptical theism possible? Yeah, let's do it. Robert in Massachusetts, you're live with Eric and V.
I'm so happy that V always takes my calls.
Hold on just a second. You're coming in real loud and on our end. It surprised the heck out of me. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
No, not your fault.
Yeah. Yes, I just said, I'm just so happy every time I call in, V takes my call. I love you, V.
Well, you have a good way of summarizing what you want to talk about. It's intriguing. Yeah, give us your thoughts on the difference between atheism and skepticism.
Well, from my understanding is that being a skeptic is not the same as necessarily being an atheist. You can not believe in God, but not have a critical mindset towards a plethora of other things. Like, for example, just because like you don't believe in God doesn't mean you are disbelieving in things like magic or spirits or any other type of woo.
Mm-hmm.
And so something that I was considering is that it's like, is it possible to be skeptical and also be a theist at the same time?
Absolutely. And you put that very, very well. I think one only needs to go to Sonoma to find plenty of people who don't think of themselves as religious, but think a lot of really, really wooey stuff. But it's interesting, you know, and it's part of the reason why we named this show Skeptic Generation, because there are plenty of atheists who are rather dogmatic in their views, and there are plenty of believers who are open to questioning the world around them. And yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head there. What do you think, V?
Yeah. I think that calling someone skeptical in general can be applied, you know, either unilaterally or, you know, by category. So I can be very skeptical about certain things and then intentionally or unintentionally kind of reserve some things from outside of that skepticism, right? So a great example is Javier, who called right before. I think Javier is an amazing example of a skeptical person who calls himself a theist and is really kind of wrestling, for lack of a better term. I know that's a very Christian thing to say, wrestling with something,
That's okay.
with this kind of dichotomy that he's finding between the skepticism and some of the claims that his faith is making. Now, whether or not that ultimately ends up with him no longer being a theist is, you know, to be seen. But yeah, it's definitely possible. The thing is, if you are a skeptic and a theist, your theism is going to change. It will. It absolutely will. If you are a skeptical theist who believes everything you believed when you were 8, I don't think that you're actually practicing skepticism very well. But if you are a theist who has gone through some kind of deconstruction, right, who has broken down some of these components and changed how you approach that faith, it's not an end goal, right? The end goal of skepticism isn't atheism. The end goal, there isn't one to begin with. It's just analyzing your beliefs and how the world works through a lens of, you know, how am I understanding this? What does the evidence say? All of this. So it's going to constantly change and shift. And that changing and shifting, regardless of what you believe about a God, is to me the biggest indicator that you are a skeptic. If your beliefs are shifting and changing as you do more work on yourself and on the information around you.
I want to push back a little bit.
Yeah?
Yeah. And it's not charitable.
Go for it. I'm too charitable on these calls. Go for it.
Well, so in this case, I think that I've met way too many atheists who were skeptical in some parts of their lives and not skeptical in others, that I can meet a Christian who has practiced skepticism wonderfully in lots of parts of their lives, but they just haven't practiced it when it comes to their religion.
Right.
And so I wouldn't tell a Christian, you're not a skeptic. I would say I want to question your skepticism of your faith and whether or not you've applied skepticism there. In the same way that I see lots of really, really shitty atheists online saying, if you're a believer, you can't be a skeptic, right? That's just not how that works. You know, applying skepticism is important, but just because you don't come to the same conclusion doesn't mean you didn't do it right. That's where these conversations are important. You know, the more you can talk to somebody who's questioned the world around them and come up with what they feel are good conclusions, the better conversations we're going to have with them. I'm not going to say you're not a skeptic. I'm going to challenge what you've done.
Well, I don't disagree. I don't disagree, and I don't think we did initially to say in that initial thing. But
I'm not.
I would put a big old asterisk on that. If you don't come to the same conclusion, it doesn't mean you didn't do it right. Because for some things, sure. For unfalsifiable claims, absolutely. There are a lot of things that people who call themselves skeptics come to conclusions about that absolutely mean that they did not do skepticism right. See every conspiracy theorist ever.
Agreed. And I think that at this point, it's kind of assuming a conversation where both people value skepticism. But yeah, you're right. There are some things that are definite tells that they have not critically questioned their beliefs. So
Right.
that's fair. And,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't say you're not a skeptic. I'd say that you're not practicing skepticism at all.
Right. Well, in general, we try not to tell other people what they are or are not.
Yeah.
But we also are beholden to what they tell us that they are. So if someone says, I'm a skeptic, what we then have to do is be like, okay, I'm going to observe you being skeptical.
Yeah.
And if your beliefs haven't changed since you were 8, or if you believe, we haven't actually landed on the moon, then I'm going to start putting that in my little, little bank of information.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm kind of thinking, what would Socrates think of watching other people gatekeep skepticism? I think he'd laugh his ass off.
I think that he didn't exist because he was
Plato.
Plato.
But that's fair. What would the idea, right? I mean, why gatekeep skepticism? What a fucking weird hill to die on.
Well, I don't know. I don't think so.
Really?
I don't think so.
If somebody were saying, Eric, you're not being a skeptic,
Right?
either A, right, I'll evaluate and be like, okay, I'm going to take a look at but I'm not going to, I don't know, I'm not going to go to war because someone said that I wasn't a skeptic.
Well, there's a
just
difference between not gatekeeping and going to war. Those are two very big.
Okay, fair. Fair.
I would want to make sure that the people that I was taking on faith and listening to and taking their word for were actually skeptics. And if we just allow anybody to equally be skeptical without analyzing whether or not they're actually practicing it correctly, then you become somebody who's going to fall for a lot of stuff.
True, but then we become prescriptivist in a scenario that can only be dealt with descriptively.
No, not necessarily, because it's an epistemology. It's a tool set. You say your toolbox. We can look at what tools the other person has in their toolbox, and they can call it skepticism, and maybe we call it something else. But then we have that conversation, and the goal is to assess, do you have the tools in your toolbox for this?
Okay.
Yeah.
I
And
gotta think about that.
this could be a versus, honestly.
Could it?
It could.
I don't think I'm holding to my views strong enough to.
I think I could make you. I think that I could goad you into digging your heels in.
Every time that happens, I wind up regretting it. I don't know if that's a good idea. Hold your views tentatively.
Robert,
Yeah, we kind of went off on a tangent.
Hi.
Hi. Hopefully this was useful. I'm not sure if it was.
whose side are you on? Who won? Who was more skeptical in that argument?
Honestly, I don't know whose side I'm on, but I absolutely fucking love what I just did.
Starting shit between us?
Oh, man.
Well, no. Let's put it this way. I kind of hate when you guys have these debates and whatnot because Eric actually kind of hit the nail on that he totally addressed my incentive for calling in about this is I'm on Facebook because I have no life, and I watch people bicker back and forth, left and right, and one sentence that really popped up in my brain was it's you can't be skeptic if you're not an atheist, and I'm like, challenge accepted.
Yeah,
Again, can we really make that assumption? Can we really can we really put a stamp on that definition? And you know what? I'm going to call B and Eric, see what they say.
I have met plenty of people who view themselves as pantheists who have applied way more skepticism to their original beliefs, and would say, hey, you know what? You've practiced skepticism a lot. And I've met plenty of believers and non-believers who haven't put in that work. So, yeah, making that, just stamping all religious folk as non-skeptics, I think, is doing everyone a disservice.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Awesome. So, yeah, I think I pretty much got a lot of information just from that alone. And by the way, guys, don't ever apologize, for going off on tangents when you take my call like that, because it's I learn a lot more I learn just as much as from that as you do exchange back and forth. I love it. You guys, I'm sitting here eating my sandwich, just listening to you guys. So it's I'm totally fine over here.
Well, Robert, we appreciate it. And we absolutely love when we can find these things and argue them out. That's one of the things that just personally we love to do.
Oh,
so
yeah.
happy to have that kind of kicked into gear by a good call.
Yeah. Enjoy your sandwich.
Yeah, thank you for calling in.
Oh my goodness.
And Robert wonders why we take his calls.
He tends to have good ones.
Yeah, that was nice. That
Yeah.
was nice. Okay. Let's see. I see one that I think I really want to talk about. So let's see if we can talk to Keith in New Jersey really quick,
Sure.
because I think it's important. Keith in New Jersey is dealing with some shit and wants to talk about it as an atheist and how that might be different. Keith, you're live with Eric and V.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, doing okay. It says in the notes that your cat had renal failure.
Yes. So my cat was kind of acting weird, throwing up a lot during the day. I took him to the vet, and the vet comes out shaking her head. You know, and the numbers were for the kidney, I guess for the kidney filtration, whatever it's called, creatinine or whatever. The numbers were like at 12 when it should be less than 1, or a little less than 12, a little less than 2. So, you know, she told me that I basically thought they were going to advise me to put him down. He's only 4 years old.
Oh.
So they had no real reason why this would happen. They thought maybe it was he ate something that poisoned him or whatever. But I had enough. Like my house is like cat friendly from top to bottom. So I couldn't really figure out what was going on, if he was born with this. We didn't have blood work in between to kind of go off of like any kind of you know, prior knowledge. So kind of threw it up to maybe it's genetic or whatever. But anyway, he was in almost complete kidney failure. And she says, you have to rush into the hospital right now. So she's like, but I'm just going to let you know it's going to cost you, you know, several $1,000s. Thankfully, I had insurance. So I didn't care. So I get in my car and, you know, shoot down to the hospital. They immediately put him in the emergency room. They put him in oxygen and pump him with antibiotics. And I could see kind of how you know, how much of a knee-jerk reaction it is to want to like pray or thank God or talk to somebody in your head. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you know, when I was a Christian, that was like kind of, you know, a bit comforting. But you know, instead, I really felt like I was putting a little bit more personal responsibility instead of, you know, doing nonsense like that. Like, you know, I went visited him at the hospital at like midnight, you know, because they're open 24 hours. You can go anytime you want. And they recommend that, you know, the owners feed the cat because they really don't eat when they're on all those IVs and that cone around their head and all this other stuff. So also what I thought was pretty interesting is my cousin, who's a Christian, he told me he was, you know, praying for the cat, but he was praying to a saint, right? Not to Jesus, of course. And then my other friend who's Jewish, she was praying as well. You know, the next day the numbers went down slightly. The, you know, doctor called me and said, you know, they're really worried and this and that. It's like, you know, and like I said, it's a lot of money to put them in an ER room. So the numbers went down slightly, and I'm like, literally, I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to bury him, how I'm going to do this. I'm single, so I'm like, I didn't want to go and like I have to go do this on my own with the doctor, and I'm like, I can't even talk with like the insurance company, and they're like, don't worry about anything, just do what you got to do, submit us all the paperwork later on, we'll take care of everything. So I'm, you know, the whole day was like a hazy fog, so the following day, the vet calls me up and says, we are extremely impressed by Lenny, that's the cat's name, Lenny's recovery. His numbers are down to 5.
Wow.
Floored, yeah.
Wow.
So,
Keith, that's really good to hear.
That was like the first time like I thought, you know, this is gonna pull through. And after
that's okay.
then the next day The next day they called me and they said that the numbers are completely normal and he can go home. And
that's wonderful.
everything is, so far, everything has been awesome. And, you know, just, yeah, I know you guys have cats. That's why I thought you'd be interested in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're really, really prone to kidney failure.
Yeah.
So I think that, like, you know, if you guys could afford insurance, especially the more cats you have, obviously the more probability that you might come across this, and it'll save you, it'll, you know, save their life, you know, depending on, you know, what plan you get and how much deductible and everything, and they're awesome to have.
Oh, we have
And my cat is,
pet insurance for sure.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, and my cat is doing great. He's on all these medications, still antibiotics, going back to the eating like crazy, drinking like crazy. So, it's been fantastic. I mean, it was a roller coaster ride, but I have to say, you know, everything turned out to be not what I expected. I'll tell you that.
Well,
That's so good to hear.
yeah, Keith, in the live chat, there are people who are pulling for you, sending you love, and hoping Lenny lives a long, happy life. And my goodness, the difference between, you know, viewing it as a believer and an unbeliever. There's something you wanted to say?
Yeah. I totally empathize with that desire to, you know, call out for help when you're feeling overwhelmed. The other week, I had to deal with the same thing. And I was just like, more than anything, I wish that I believed in a God that I thought would help me.
Right.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's a head trip, especially if you believed that at one point and don't anymore. It can really, in those moments, feel like a loss. But it's just kind of one of the things you have to give up in order to live a life that is free and impacted by your choices and your decisions, and you made the right ones.
Yeah.
And so, you know, even if there is no God, but you still saved your cat, and so did the people at the hospital, and your insurance is going to help you out, and
they deserve the thanks and
right.
recognition.
Things worked. And so
Yeah.
for me, just next time I feel that urge to ask for, you know, divine assistance, for me, thinking about the times that things seemed really terrible and then turned out okay will help.
Yeah. And just as an aside, for those friends who said that they were praying, I mean, what better remedy for helplessness than to think that you can appeal to a divine being that can fix it? I mean, I think nowadays when I hear people say that they're praying, what I hear is, I'm feeling helpless right now. And, you know, it's definitely interesting to kind of recontextualize that it is a tool that I think a lot of people use to try and remedy their own helplessness, but often that comes at the expense of doing what you did, which is the hard work of getting them to people who could actually get the work done. Mm-hmm. And it's awesome that you did. And Keith, I think it's important that you called, and I think it's important that we talk about it on this show, because I think that there are lots of people who need to hear this, who have gone through or are going through what you're going through at some part in their lives, and need to know that they're not alone, and that, yeah, you killed it, Keith. You did great.
Thanks. And after hearing my story, like, you know, through my friends or whatever, and I had 3 people sign up for insurance.
Yep.
And, I mean, it was a story, like, like I said, emotional roller coaster. But I was very, very focused on thanking the people who did the help. I sent them the edible arrangements for all the staff.
Oh yeah.
Made sure that, you know, I was.
I love
that. Used to that. To be honest with you, they had, like, when I brought that in, like, they didn't even know what it, like, because it's a hospital, it's very expensive. Most people, like, I guess, you know, leave their animal if they have to put it down, and they don't even pay. It goes to collections or whatever, because you have to put down this huge deposit.
Oh my goodness.
Because they're, I guess, afraid of people fleeing.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I brought in the edible arrangements, they didn't expect that. They didn't even know what it was for.
Aww.
Because, you know, that's not how it is over there, I guess.
Man, well, it sounds like you are a good cat parent and a good
humanist.
And yeah, everybody out there, get your cat pet insurance.
Yeah, so long as you can. We for people who haven't tried, I know that our vet suggested pumpkin pet insurance, and we found an affordable plan. And well, this is not a paid sponsorship, but Pumpkin, if you would like to sponsor us, we are open.
Oh my goodness, can you imagine? All right, thank you so much,
brought
Keith.
to you by, yeah.
All right.
Take care, Keith.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
weekend.
You too.
Take care.
Yeah. Okay.
Keith is a good storyteller. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time.
Definitely was succinct, didn't go overly long, kept it. Yeah, that was good.
Well
I liked
done.
that. All right. I want to talk to Brendan. What about you?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's talk to Brendan in South Carolina. Brendan, it says in the notes that Brendan is a pagan, and his question is, should I be trying to get rid of my beliefs? Brendan, is that about right?
Yeah, so the short of the long basically is that I've been a pagan for the majority of my life.
Okay.
And a couple months ago, I kind of had this realization that if at the time I had become a pagan, I were aware of atheism in general, I feel like there would have been a chance I would have become an atheist. But that hasn't, like, as I've been thinking that over, that hasn't really impacted my beliefs. And I was wondering, what your guys' thoughts are. I've enjoyed both of you guys since, you were on like ACA content and stuff like that. And when I found you, when I found you guys' show, I was like, I'd love to hear your opinion on whether or not there's like utility in seeking out, trying to get rid of beliefs if I don't feel like they're going away on their own or something.
That is a great question. I think we got to start with defining beliefs. And the way that I define beliefs is a belief is something that you accept to be true. It doesn't have anything to do with whether or not it is true. It's just something that you accept to be true. And so I have beliefs, you have beliefs, everybody has beliefs about things. We accept things to be true about the world around us. What we want to do isn't get rid of our beliefs, it's to challenge our beliefs and make sure that we believe things for good reasons. And so when you're saying, get rid of your beliefs, no, because then you're going to wind up in absolute paralysis, not knowing whether or not the sun's going to come up in the morning. But if you are, not questioning the rituals or just the reasons that you have for doing the things that you do, then it could benefit from healthy skepticism.
Yeah. I feel like, I feel weird. Like, you guys had a call earlier where someone was talking about like, skepticism and being a theist. So I feel kind of weird. I have applied, some skepticism to it. And, a bit of the conclusion that I've come to is that like, I think that, my beliefs about gods in general are fairly flexible. I feel like there are a lot of pagans who kind of take a very monotheistic-esque kind of dogmatic view of like what the gods are and like what they're for. And I stay away from that. You know what I mean? I think that that they really, to me, just kind of represent like things about life. You know what I mean? Just like, staying relatively generic, like a goddess of like, maternity is just representative of like our ideals of like what maternity is. You know what I mean? And so they're like very flexible and they kind of change over time. They were something to people who worshiped those gods thousands of years ago, and those gods, as our views on the same things, have also adapted. So like I don't try to live my life
let's
so much.
I'd like to challenge that because I think that is an example of something that, as you get more esoteric, more flexible things get, the easier it is to kind of let things slide through. But if we look at our last caller as an example, somebody who said that their friend was praying for, their cat to get better. if you believed, if you accepted to be true that prayer would cause that healing, would you necessarily have gone to a vet? Would you necessarily have gone to professionals who could take care of that in a way that we understand medicine, right? When the rubber hits the road is when we look at practical application of belief. And so, that is a very, very simple example. There are plenty of people who have denied getting their children medicine or taking their children to hospital because they thought that prayer was the most effective thing to do. And so they did that instead of taking their child to the hospital. And so I think we can really kind of dig into the meat of more practical application of skepticism than talking about the more esoteric stuff. So let's dig into practical application of skepticism. Should you be getting rid of bad beliefs when you're talking about practical things? I think that should be the most important place that you go. Before you get really esoteric, make sure that you are having a good understanding of what you think about medicine, what you think about the power of prayer, what you think about, how we should treat each other, and what are the impacts of the way that we treat each other. Those are really where I think you should be focusing. And I got to ask, how do you feel about applying skepticism there? And what has that done for your beliefs?
I feel like I definitely, and you know what I mean? Like, I've said this in conversations I've had with, you know what I mean? Like people like my wife and stuff like that. I feel like I definitely put things in a bit of a hierarchy, you know what I mean? Like I take like physical evidence, you know what I mean? Like science, medicine, that kind of stuff comes first. We have like specific data that shows us how these things, you know what I mean, like work, how these medicines are, you know what I mean, like helpful, how vaccines and other things, you know what I mean, like do function. And so when you've got that hard evidence, like I don't think that this is a kind of a metaphor that I actually just thought of the other day while I was having a conversation. It's like if I'm walking and like I trip on a rock, I assume that rock has been there because I can see it there. I don't think that like it got put there to trip me up. You know what I mean? Like the physical things that we can look at, they're here because they're real. You know what I mean? The medicine works because it works, not because somebody wanted somebody to get better, And so like I definitely place all of that stuff. Like I believe good research first.
Mm-hmm.
So question, believing in good research and recognizing that we have high standards for medicine, or we try to have high standards for medicine, does that make you feel like you're getting rid of your beliefs, or is that living kind of alongside other things that you believe? Is that in opposition in any way to your beliefs?
No, I don't feel like it is. I feel like, it's I don't think that the medicine works because of a God's influence, but like, I guess and it sounds kind of Christian-y, but like, I guess I kind of see, I don't know. I'm kind of, my brain's kind of like fizzling out on this a little bit.
Hey, no worries. I think to recognize, hey, you know what, I'm at this place is something I wish everybody did. A lot of people will just open their mouths and go on and on, even if like, no, you're good. Recognize that as a place to grow.
I would definitely encourage you to sit in exactly that space, Brendan, because that is exactly the key to talking about these beliefs. That, for instance, medicine works well. And the reason it does that is because we have figured out how to treat certain diseases using science. And where does that God belief come into play? Or is it just in a completely separate arena? So that connection between the two is where I would focus. And there isn't necessarily a right or wrong answer there, as long as practically you are still going to the doctor and allowing, your medical professionals to influence, your treatment plan. But if you are saying, okay, well, I see, things that I value about a healing God in the way that medicine works. Okay, cool. You see a metaphorical connection there that is meaningful to you and maybe might even compel you to pursue medical treatment or to value that as something that you should have. That's cool. If that's the connection, then I don't really have a problem with that outside of I would need to be convinced if you told me that God actually existed,
Yeah.
Right.
Brandon, I hopefully this has been a useful call. I know there's one thing that I usually say when it comes to this concept, and I don't know if I can help myself this time.
You're doing so good.
I'm going to say it.
Okay.
Yeah. Brandon, when we talk about applying skepticism, it does boil down to a deep discomfort in recognizing that you don't know as much as you thought you did. And, boiling things down to why we do what we do can be very uncomfortable. And the term for that is aporia. Aporia, that deep discomfort when you recognize just how tenuous your understanding of things is. And that deep discomfort is exactly what I think V was saying, that you got to sit in, because ultimately that feeling in your belly of discomfort, that's what eureka feels like. And it's a good place to be. Anyway, Brendan, thank you for calling in.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something to think about. And if I get any more interesting thoughts, I guess I'll try and call back.
Absolutely.
Sounds good. Thank you for calling in.
Yep, thank you guys.
Brendan had such good gating on his mic, whatever he was using, that it sounded like we lost him every time we would take a minute. It's
right?
like, did we lose Brendan? No, it just beautiful sound canceling.
Yeah.
I do also want to address real quickly before we move on, this concept of should I be doing this if they aren't leaving on their own, right? And like this idea of you can't choose your beliefs, this idea that you are kind of at the whim of whatever convinces you, is actually a really interesting conversation. And in general, I feel like there's this thing where like, if it's not happening organically, then you're forcing it, or it's not correct, or like you should wait for, the day you wake up and are like, oh, suddenly this thing doesn't make sense anymore. I guess I don't believe it. And that could be how it works for some people, but there isn't a should there, right? There is no ought necessarily. It shouldn't matter whether you are actively trying to disprove something or to prove something, or if one day it just doesn't really make sense to you anymore after you've aggregated a bunch of information naturally. It's probably going to be a combination of both of them. Probably what's going to end up happening is you are going to expose yourself often enough to information that counteracts or contradicts a belief, that one day you're going to think about that belief and go, oh, wait, I don't quite...
Is that for a good reason?
Is that right? Because it sounded right, but also I know these other things.
Yeah.
And then you're going to be intentional, hopefully, about going and looking that up and being like, okay, let me do some research. Where did this belief originate? What are the contradictions here? What are the arguments against it? And then maybe that belief goes away. And that's going to be a combination of things happening naturally, but also being active if skepticism, again, is something that you value.
I honestly, that makes me think of something that happened to me. I would love to share if I get just a sec. It's our show, damn it. When I was a kid, I believed in La Llorona, this woman of the river by where I lived. It was this story that this woman drowned her children in the river, and she would call to her children, and if she'd found you, she'd steal you, take you away. And it was a story that parents told kids in my neighborhood to get us to come in before it got too dark. And I remember I didn't really think too much about it until I talked to a kid from somewhere else who I was like, oh, wait, there's this La Llorona. And they were like, oh, I'm from that town. That was my river. And I was like, no, that was my river. You know?
Oh, no.
Yeah. And I went, wait a second. And it wasn't until that really struck, I didn't sit there and try and fight that, but it was that that catalyst moment that led me to. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It just, yeah.
It's going to be a combination.
Agreed.
And there is no perfect way to come to a correct conclusion. If you got there and it is correct, then good for you.
Yeah. Okay. So I see Seth in Massachusetts who wants to have a conversation, especially we've got some really good callers, but I think this could, because this seems to be like Skepticism Day.
Yeah.
Happy birthday to me. I'm okay with that. Seth in Massachusetts thinks that the word skepticism has lost all of its meaning. And ooh, let's talk about it. Seth, you're live with Eric and V.
Well, this is my first time calling into anything, so I'm a little nervous.
Don't be.
Totally okay. Glad you called in. It's good. What do you think? What's kind of your idea? Yeah.
Well, I'm my own unique situation where I've been an atheist since I was 5 years old, but my mom's been a Jehovah's Witness all my life. So I kind of saw it like a messy comic book and just didn't make any sense.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, if you're not raised in it and you're not told that it's true, it can seem pretty fantastical.
And basically, but I've noticed over the last few years, people who like flat earthers and other anti-government or conspiracy theorists all calling themselves skeptics so much, saying, well, how can you believe this agency, or how can you? But luckily, my mom worked in the education field, helping with adult basic education, and it worked with the Massachusetts jails a lot.
Okay.
So I was able to understand that one of the things that she did teach me well about was education was first and foremost, and like when it comes to what type of organizations to go look into, always vet. Like when it comes to looking for colleges, always go with the ones that are globally accredited, because they've been recognized by more than just a couple of countries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
those are good tips.
But
but I've noticed.
Oh, go ahead.
Like a couple of years ago, while I was still living in Springfield, while doing laundry one night, I met a science teacher who happened to be a flat earther. And all I'm thinking is, how could he even get that job?
Because science teachers are in short supply. You could probably roll up and be like, hi, I'd like to teach STEM at a middle school level. And they'd be like, come in, please.
Actually, just recently, Phoenix has rolled back their requirements for becoming a teacher. You no longer need to have a college education.
No way.
I believe it's either a college education or a degree.
A master's?
I don't think that teachers should be qualified based on college education.
I do.
Based on simple logic, honestly.
Well,
you can have a simple exam, psychological exam, to see if they have the logical sense to be a teacher.
Well, honestly, I think that the argument is somewhere else. Let me posit a counterexample here. I think that when it comes to people like flat earthers and, other kind of conspiracy theorists, it's not whether or not they're skeptical. They use the word skepticism because skepticism ultimately does break down your confidence in in whatever the claim is. That is what skepticism does. What it really is about is a different assertion, the assertion that there is a global conspiracy that is out to trick or hurt you, and it gets smuggled into the word skepticism, but it's not that. The skepticism just has to do with your confidence in the thing. The counterclaim is the conspiracy theory. And so I wouldn't put those together. And I think that ultimately, when you're saying that skepticism may have lost its meaning, I think that is where I would say that is true, that people have conflated skepticism with conspiracy when we'd need to separate those.
And a lot of YouTubers use Skeptic in their name when they are promoting these conspiracies, and it really irritates me.
I agree, which is why Skeptic Generation is doing its best to push back.
Well, I came across you guys about a month and a half ago when Dusty Smith showed a clip of you guys.
Oh, didn't know Dusty was watching.
No.
Hey, Dusty.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Dusty
this is...
tries to keep up on everything, but he's improved over the years. He's getting better every time. But sometimes he's losing his shit. I'll admit it.
I honestly, Seth, could not tell you. I don't keep tabs. But I guess I'm glad to be featured. I don't know.
I just think this is...
You were in the hero section, I believe.
I didn't hear that.
We were in the hero section?
Oh.
Yeah, because basically it was that you stood up against someone, I believe.
Cool.
It was like a month and a half ago, I think it was on.
God damn it, Seth. Now we're going to have to do that later.
No, we're not going to bother.
No,
but thank you. Thank you so much for calling in, Seth. I think that this conversation is exactly what I was trying to get at on that other call where I was talking about skepticism needing to mean a particular tool set, or else we run into situations where you get science teachers who are flat earthers.
George Carlin should be taught in elementary school.
You know what's funny? My Christian college professor put on George Carlin clips before every class. Everyone else made us pray, and he put on George Carlin clips. And I think he knew what he was doing. I really do. All right. Thanks, Seth.
Thank you, Seth. Hey, Seth.
Have a good day.
Seth, for your first call, you did great.
Yeah, good job.
Oh, and tell Keith, hope his cat stays better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. Take care. All right. We have so many. We have like 7 callers and not enough time. V, who would you like to talk to?
We have got 12 minutes.
Okay.
So it should be somebody who we think could have a 12-minute conversation.
Okay. Why don't we go with Nick in Utah?
Sounds good.
Nick in Utah, the question is, when does a religious belief become too harmful to ignore, particularly when it comes to family and friends? Damn, that is a good
question.
Nick, set us up.
Hi, Eric. Hi, V. How are you doing?
Doing good. Excited to talk about this.
Yeah.
Also, Eric, I wanted to say happy birthday. It's also my birthday.
Happy birthday!
Hey, happy
How old
birthday!
Yeah, I know birthdays in July aren't super uncommon, but anyway, yeah. So I am living here in Utah, land of the Mormons, and I'm constantly, just surrounded by friends and family that donate 10% of their income to a very harmful institution. So I constantly kind of feel bad for confronting people with their harmful beliefs that are actively, like I said, harming people that I love and that have harmed me. It's like, at what point should we, at what point can we ignore that, and what point should we actively confront those things?
That is a very poignant question, not just from a religious standpoint, but also from a political one.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to have family and friends who actively vote against you having rights, who then tell you, oh, I love you so much and I care about what happens to you.
Yes.
Exactly.
I would split this into a few categories.
Okay.
The first is your platform. What is your relationship to the person, right? So for us, our platform right now in this context is a call-in show. If someone's going to call in and be an asshole, I'll tell them they're a fucking asshole and we'll move on. I'm not going to do that in the other contexts, right? If I'm talking to a friend, I may not call them a fucking asshole. I might, but it totally changes what that interaction is going to look like. When it comes to family, people you love, people you want to have, and have invested time and real emotional labor in creating a relationship, I think that you can't make the decision for other people, but you should make those decisions for yourself. If it feels to you like it's too harmful to ignore, then you have every single right to limit your engagement with those other people to however much you feel comfortable with. If you say, hey, you know what, when you're doing all of these things, it makes me feel unsafe, or it makes me really not comfortable with engaging, you have every right to do that, because you have just as much, say in that relationship. And if they go, well, why are you doing this? Here are the reasons. They can decide for themselves. But that is specifically the arena of family and friends. I think the bigger arena that I'm sure V would love to talk about is the arena of what we do collectively socially, which is an entirely different obligation, an entirely different way of addressing it. What do you think, V?
Yeah. Honestly, I could go on and on about the, collective angle, but I won't, because we have like 5 minutes. Nick, I think where we would get into a sticky situation would be if I were to tell you when it became too harmful. If I was going to dictate to you when you should cut someone off, or when you should stop talking to somebody, because that definitely is something that you are going to need to determine for yourself, and that is going to be a cost-benefit analysis between what do you think is going to happen in either case, which is easier to live with, which will, give you more peace of mind. And ultimately it's going to change based on the person. You don't have to decide that you say this one thing and anybody who says that thing automatically gets cut off. Maybe there are some people who you don't really have a very good relationship with them anyway, so maybe we stop talking to them. There are other people who might say something very similar, equally hurtful, but you have a deeper relationship and the ability to possibly affect their mindset moving forward. In that case, you might not want to cut off ties. So it is going to be a person-by-person thing. Yeah. The only thing I will bring up, and Nick, I don't know what if you're white or what your race is, but I was talking at this convention that I went to last month in Portland about how it's so interesting, and I'm going to butcher it. I highly recommend that you go follow people like Joe Lohman in order to get more information here. But there's this idea that because we are so individualistic, it's very easy for white people specifically to cut ties with family members and just decide, I don't want to deal with you anymore. You're too annoying, or you make me feel bad, so we're done. And what is suggested by some people who do not have that mindset is, hey, what if instead of doing that, you treated that as a battlefield that you then engaged with? Because the people who are going to be impacted by those negative beliefs, more often than not, are not you specifically, but people that that person is then going to go and affect. And so if you have the ability, because you are family, because you are maybe look like them or speak like them, you have the ability to kind of bring those conversations to the front and engage in that way. That should be something that is considered a moral obligation. Again, this is only in circumstances where they are not being physically or emotionally abusive to you. This is only in situations where they are not actively in a cult, because that can actually negatively impact them if you try and pull them out like that. All this to say, there are a lot of people who will say, I'm done. I'm leaving.
Not my circus, not my monkeys.
I'm never talking to you again, and I am a good person because I've decided to cut ties. And my suggestion is maybe a good person will also reach out, as long as it is not harmful physically or emotionally for them.
Right. Yeah, and I don't think that, a lot of Mormons or, members of the LDS faith are super, combative or anything, until you confront them with issues in, their beliefs.
Right.
and I think that that's a big problem that the Mormon Church has. It's just that it's emotionally, like so heavily emotionally connects everything to your identity.
Yeah.
So the second that you bring up an issue with any kind of belief, it feels like a deep personal attack, and it becomes hard to even have a conversation. Like I was having a conversation with my grandmother not too long ago, just talking about like just the finances of the church, which are just kind of sketchy, and she was getting very like heated about it. I was like, we were talking about just money. Like, this isn't even like a heated issue.
Right. And you don't have to push until they get mad either. It's very, very helpful to introduce the subject. And then if they have a desire to learn more, or if it bothers them, they can go look into that on their own time when they're not feeling defensive. And that can actually do a lot to start bringing people around, if not, completely leaving, at least being aware that there are problems and maybe being willing to fix some of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Making them uncomfortable is enough. It doesn't need to end with you having a mic drop moment.
Although those are fun too.
They are fun, but maybe not in that category.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair.
Nick, thank you for calling in, and best of luck. I know that we aren't able to give you a silver bullet argument, and I really wish we could, but I think you're right. Nick, so long as you're able to have conversations and get them to think about things, that really is good. And we wish you the best of luck. And just don't overexert yourself to the point where you're putting yourself in a bad situation, because you deserve wellness too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you a lot, guys. This is something that I've been thinking about for a while, but recently I was watching, like, I don't know if you're familiar with Brandon Sanderson, but
oh god, I love Brandon Sanderson. Don't get me started on the Cosmere. Dude, I have backed all of the Kickstarter projects. I've got the board game. I've got the RPG book. Yeah.
You heard it here first. Eric financially supports the Mormons.
Eric, that actually,
support Brandon
I'm glad that you said that, because that's kind of my issue. Is recently he did a live stream and someone asked him, how do you feel about characters in the queer characters in your books being treated better than the campus that you teach at? And, talking about how he is a member of the LDS faith. So, any support of him is kind of indirectly supporting the church. And so that's kind of what brought that to the forefront of my mind.
So I personally think that when different characters and different mythologies are introduced to the world, it becomes ours. I could only imagine how much Tolkien would be aghast at the stuff that we've done with his concepts. I could only imagine how much fan art Tolkien would take before being like, okay, that's enough. This is not mine. I have nothing to do with this. I wash my hands.
Oh, I can imagine.
Crap. What is a /fic?
No, it took exactly that was him alive. People would write fan letters and he'd be like, oh gosh, why? yeah. We really do need to wrap up though.
Okay. Okay, fine. We're not going to talk about shipping Frodo and Sam then. That's fine. Nick, thank you for calling in, and take care.
Yeah.
Before we go on any further, this show is brought to you by you. If you like what we do and you're sick of the freaking ads, guess what? There's a way that you can get rid of the ads. Go to patreon.com/skeptic generation. That's patreon.com/skeptic generation. You can get you can get an ad-free version of this show. You can get an ad-free version of the podcast and a whole bunch of other stuff. And we really, really sincerely appreciate the support.
Yeah.
We do update our thanks, because that is beyond a certain tier. We will thank you at the end of every episode. We do that once a month. So if you do become a patron, you can take a look at the credits next month when that will start. today's my birthday, and I'm absolutely loving the birthday thanks, and we're going to read those super chats. But before we do, there are other ways to help. Hit the like button, hit subscribe. We sincerely appreciate it. We are almost at 15,000 subscribers, and we are just like at the line. So if you've been watching and you haven't hit subscribe, please help us get over that hump. That would be really, really cool. That would be an awesome birthday present.
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah. Also, if you do want to help us with our set so we don't look like we're just on a Zoom call, we have a whole bunch of stuff that we want to do in making this show better. If you want to speed it up, Amazon Prime Day is this week. And if you get the chance, we do have a wish list, an Amazon wish list, and that would be cool. tiny.cc/SG wish list. That's tiny.cc/SG wish list. That said, you ready to go in and read some super chats? And then, hey, you know what? Let's do a live show, an after show.
Wow. Deep breaths.
I'm sorry. You said we needed to go quick.
Deep breaths. We're good.
If you want to hang out with us and say hi after this show, hop into Discord. Links are in the description. We'd be happy to talk to you.
Yes.
Now let's read some super chats.
Okay. Lucas Black sent $10 and said, happy birthday.
Yay. Janet Morecraft sent $20 and says, V and Eric, you're both inspiring and make a difference. Happy birthday, Eric. Oh, thank you, Janet.
Thank you. Cameron Jensen also sent $20 and says, happy birthday, my brother from another mother. Go spend $20 on something to treat yourself.
Aw, thank you. That did feel so good. Holly K sent $10 and says, happy birthday, Eric. Thank you, Holly.
Muldred also sent $10
Red.
and says, having real choice is not the issue. Humans don't feel too strongly about that, but having the feeling that you have choice makes a difference.
Ooh, when it comes to interventionary prayer, probably.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Possibly.
Muldred then sent $5 and says, hippo birdie 2 E's. Hippo birdie 2 E's, hippo birdie, hippo birdie, hippo birdie 2 E's. I have no idea.
It's happy birthday, but with animals.
Oh, got it.
King Nick, 1994, sent 10 euros.
I think euros, yep.
Okay. Happy birthday, Eric. Mine is tomorrow. Sending
Early
you
happy
guys
birthday.
another Hobbit birthday present. You guys make our Sundays. If you ever are in Slovenia or thereabouts, I'll gladly buy you a beer or two.
That sounds amazing.
We may take you up on that in a couple of years.
Sarah Dye sent $20. Thank you, Sarah. Says, sadly, I couldn't catch the show live today, but will listen later. I have also started a book V recommended a while back called Our Non-Christian Nation by Jay Wexler. I'm enjoying it so far.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good book. And
Yeah.
if you enjoy that, the next book I would recommend is Sex and the Constitution by Jeffrey Stone. Also really, really good.
We should set up like an Audible thing.
A book list?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
Maybe we should do that soon.
Yeah, leave a comment if you'd like a Skeptic Generation book list.
Or you know what? Maybe we could set up like a Skepgen code for a free book from Audible. I think that's something we could do.
Maybe, but then we'd have to partner with Amazon, and that's it. RG sent $2 Australian and a banana.
Sarah Dye sent $5 and says, happy birthday, Eric.
Yay,
Thank
and
you.
John Klein sent $5 and says, happy birthday, Eric. Love you both.
Thank you so much. V, I lost my shit at the beginning of this episode.
You lost it, and we have yet to find it.
Yeah. But hey, everybody. V's going to have a really, really cool guest, I think, next week.
Yes, it is confirmed, actually.
Is it? Do you want to tell them?
Yeah, if you guys are familiar with Robert Reed.
Or the NFL? Or
Yeah, he's
Twitter?
former football player, amazing person to follow on Twitter if you aren't already. He does videos, shorter, like YouTube shorts on, they're called Gin and Truth. We'll share all of his contact information. He hasn't been on a live show like this, I don't think, so I'm excited to have him on.
Right here in the studio.
Right here in the studio. It's going to be freaking amazing, and I'm so excited. So definitely tune in next week.
I am going to take a well-deserved little break. But we hope to see you in the Discord after the show. And until next time,
We're glad we had this talk.